One of the biggest frustrations for cinematographers is ND filters. That is why I almost always use a camera that has internal NDs like the Canon C70. So no matter the lighting situation that you find yourself in, you can get the correct exposure on your camera. However, there are a lot of cameras that don't have internal NDs, and some that I really like the new Lumix S1R2 and S1 II. Now there are some adapters if you're using PL or EF mount lenses where you can put the ND behind the lens, and that's really great. But if you want to use the new, more modern mirrorless lenses, then you're gonna have to have a front ND. Now, front NDs are annoying because they've been historically screw-on NDs. So you'd have to actually screw your ND on every time you went from inside to outside or change lenses, and that can be a pain and you can miss shots. But quite a few companies have come out with some new types of NDs that use magnets. My favorite by a pretty wide margin is this, the Nisi JetMag Pro. So why do you need a neutral density filter in the first place, and why are variable NDs so important? Well, in videography, it's pretty important that you abide by the 180-degree shutter rule, which basically just means that your shutter speed is twice as fast as your frame rate. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, then you want your shutter speed to be 1/48th of a second. And also, cameras generally have a native ISO, where they perform the best and have the most dynamic range. For the C70 and a lot of Canon cameras, that's 800 ISO. So you can't touch your shutter speed. You can't really change your ISO if you want the best performance from your camera. So all you have left is your aperture. Obviously, if you're shooting film, you might want your aperture at a specific f-stop. You might want to shoot an f4 or even shoot wide open at an f1.4 and get that really creamy background. It gets really bright outside. You don't want to ramp it up to an f16 because then everything's in focus, and that may not be the look you're going for. So you have to control the exposure some way, and if you can't change your shutter speed, your ISO, or your aperture, then the only thing you can do is limit the amount of light that's getting through your lens and hitting your sensor. And so that's why an ND filter allows you to do that. Now, hard stop NDs are good for a couple reasons. The first is you can still use your lens hood because they're the same size as most normal filters. And the second is they pretty much guarantee there'll be no real color shift because they are a single strength of neutral density. The bad part with hard stop NDs is they're not variable. So if the exposure just changes, the sun comes out, or it gets a little brighter or a little darker, you either have to put on another ND or take that one off, and it's not a very quick system. So for filmmakers, variable NDs have become the most popular. So variable NDs have long been useful, but if they were screw-on NDs, you still had to take the time to screw them off and screw them on if you were changing lenses or if the exposure changed a little too much. So having a system that's magnetic makes it really quick. So often I will just have a ND filter pouch on my belt, and if I go outside, I pull it out, slap it on, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, there are a couple other magnetic variable NDs on the market, but I prefer this for a few reasons. The first is a lot of the other brands don't start at a single stop, which this one does. So when you put this ND filter on, you have one stop of neutral density, which is sometimes all you need, where some others start at 2 or 3 stops, which are just a little too dark, and therefore you're kind of in between that. Do you want the ND on or off? And that can be a total pain. Another great feature of the JetMag is that when you can slap it on, you can just leave it like that and start using it and be good to go. But if you want it to be a little more secure, you can just give it a little bit of a half turn, and now that filter is locked in place. So that thing is rock solid. Even if you yank on it, it's not coming off there. So rest assured that if you're running around doing run and gun doc filmmaking, that thing's gonna stay on there. Another nice design feature of the JetMag Pro is the little pin that's on your variable ND. Now, this is removable if you don't want it on there, but it's really nice when you're shooting to be able to find that pin really easily to change your neutral density from 1 to 5 stops. And this highlights why variable NDs are so useful. Sometimes the exposure changes just a little bit. You're just a half stop over or a half stop under, and being able to just change the neutral density strength just that amount so that your exposure is correct in camera is why neutral density filters, and the variable kind specifically, are so useful. A great thing about the JetMag Pro variable ND is that it has hard stops on either end so that you don't get that cross polarization that you see with a lot of variable NDs where you have this X pattern that will ruin your shots. So you know when you hit the hard stop that you're either at minimum strength or maximum strength of your variable ND. So already we can see the qualities the JetMag Pro system gives us. It's got that great snap-on magnetic filter that locks in if you need to. Great design with the pin, easy to change from 1 to 5 stops. The fact that it starts at 1 stops is great. But you get into that situation where it gets really bright and you need extra strength. And honestly, 5 stops is just not enough. Luckily, Nisi thought about that, and they also include a 4 stop in the JetMag system that you just slap on the front of your variable ND, and now you have a 6 to 9 stop variable ND for those really bright sunny days. It's hard to overemphasize how important the 1 to 9 stop range is. A lot of variable NDs will be 2 to 5 or 3 to 7, and that's just not a big enough range in a lot of situations. The 3 is too dark, the 7 is not dark enough, and so having a system that can go from 1 to 9 really quickly is probably the most impressive and useful part of the JetMag Pro. The JetMag Pro system also allows you to stack filters, as we saw with the 4-stop ND, but that doesn't just stop at ND filters. You can also use things like a mist filter that can also just slap right on the front of variable ND, and suddenly you have a 1 to 5 stop variable ND with a 1/8 or 1/4 mist on the front. Oh.
Shattered.
Oh, strong. Drop test on the mist filter. Right on some gravel, no problem. Nisi makes some pretty robust filters. So I have the 1 to 5 stop, the 4 stop, and then the 1/8 mist, but there are a lot of different filters and effects on the Nisi website that you can use with this system, so check it out in the links below. So the best way to use these magnetic filters is to have screw-on step-up rings for each of your lenses, and that way you can quickly swap the JetMag Pro from lens to lens. So if you're just using a zoom and you're on a 24 to 105, then maybe just getting this just when you're going in and outside, you can quickly slap that on, that's great. But if you're changing lenses a lot, if you're using primes, then having a different step-up ring for every lens will be really useful. Otherwise, you're just screwing this thing on and off over and over again, like a normal screw-on ND. Now, if you wanted to keep the ND filter on your camera while in transit, or just stick it in the back of your car while you're going to the next location, then it does have this great magnetic lens cap that just slaps on the front and keeps the glass safe from any potential damage or scratches. If you want to store the variable ND system, then when you pop it off, it also has a back cap. And suddenly you have a really travel-friendly and very secure set of variable NDs. Now, you use a variable ND to get the correct exposure, but you don't want it to mess up your image as well. So sometimes variable NDs do have a color shift. So here is some tests with the true color from Nisi against the internal Canon NDs. Bugs are coming out. So are there any cons to the JetMag Pro? And honestly, the only one is the fact that it's a front of lens ND, which I prefer in-body NDs whenever possible. But if you're using some of the great new mirrorless cameras, or even the Blackmagic Pixis that doesn't have NDs in it, then there's really no better option in the market right now than I think the JetMag Pro. The only other con I can think of is that if you do want to use this system on a wide range of lenses, then you're going to be buying quite a few of the step-up rings. So if you need to buy 5 or 6 of these step-up rings, that does add to the overall cost. And then if you want to just leave these on there to make it really simple to snap that on, then you're also probably going to want to get some extra magnetic lens caps to go on the front so that you can protect your lens when they don't have the filter on the front. Let me know in the comments below of what you think of the JetMag Pro and if there are other ND systems that you use and love. And we'll see you in the next video.